Good morning and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm going to be talking about Dungeon Crawl Classics. But before I begin with that, I want to thank everybody for hanging in there. It's been about 10 days since I've put out a video. I've been actually pretty sick with a nagging and persistent cough that was really quite explosive. Once in a while it would just take me over and I go into a coughing fit. And so I just wasn't quite up for, doing videos and, having a fit and, and having to redo them anyway. So I decided to just take a break and let the antibiotics and some rest catch up. And, hopefully I will get through this video without any coughing outbursts. That's the other reason why I'm not wearing my headset. I got my sound over here, my mic over here. That way, if I do cough, it's not going to blow your heads up. So, back to the game. Dungeon Crawl Classics. So, let me switch views here real quick. So, here's the book. Very large volume here, 465 or so pages of content. The book, I got this from Amazon for like $24. So there are cheap solutions for softcover that you can find. It's currently, I just checked, it's currently not available on Drive-Thru RPG that I could tell, other than in PDF form, which was $24.95. But if either of those aren't an option for you and you wanted to go with a cheaper version of it, you can go with the Quick Start, which was, I believe, $1.99 on Drive-Thru RPG. So you can connect through Drive-Thru RPG on my, in the description of the video below, and jump over there and pick up a copy of the, of the Quick Start at least. Switching back over. So I'm going to start going through this and a few other things, comments about Dungeon Crawl Classics. And this is just a perception that I've had, considering the circles of gamers that I follow and I talk to and such. A year ago, I would say that the primary OSR game out there was Basic Fantasy, role-playing game. And I'd say that recently I'm seeing much more Dungeon Crawl Classics and a lot more people making compatible products for Dungeon Crawl Classics. So, maybe there's a bit of a changing of the guard there. As great a game system as Basic Fantasy is, and certainly as cheap a solution, for some people who are looking to try new systems and find new systems out there that are, pretty affordable. That's still, I think, one of the cheapest OSR game systems that I've seen out there, where the soft cover is $5, and then everything else you can pretty much get in PDF or soft cover printings as well, but still fairly cheap. So let's get back into this now. So, Dungeon Crawl Classics. I'm just going to deal with the first 3 chapters, so I'm going to piecemeal this because there is a lot of content in here. And one of the first things that struck me is I was hearing about, well, Dungeon Crawl Classics, they have these funky dice. These funky dice is the major difference between the games. So let me just go to my desktop here. And so here's the soft cover. Let me line this up first. So here are the funky dice. And I got these for like $9 on Amazon. So this here is a D30. And they're all odd numbers. Here's a D7. This is a D3. This is a D24. This I'm going to say is probably a D16, and a D5. So all of those kind of like weird in between dice rolls that you can make in this game that are requiring the the non-traditional D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20, and D100 dice that you see in other games. So these are called funky dice, and for that reason. Now, I'll talk about their purpose a little bit later, but let's start going into the book itself. So, Dungeon Crawl Classics, and you can see the artwork is really good, high quality artwork. It's a style that you're either going to like it or you're not, but I really do like this style of artwork. It's almost like comic strip type artwork that goes with it. So the design and writing is by Joseph Goodman, and this is a Goodman Games product. All right, it's the Glory and Gold 1 by Glory and Gold 1 by Sorcery and Sword is the it's kind of like the subtitle of the game. So Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game, Glory and Gold 1 by Sorcery and Sword. All right, and this is a very, very acclaimed game system out there. A lot of people talk about it, a lot of people playing it, and there are communities for this that you can find on on the various social networking sites as well, from Facebook to Twitter and so on. So there's a huge community up and around this. All right, so let me get to, so I'm just going to deal with chapters 1, 2, and 3 today with this video. And so chapter 1 is characters, chapter 2 is their skills, and chapter 3 is their equipment. I'll actually get into the gameplay systems such as the combat and the magic, and get to running quests and such in later videos. So like I said, this is a very advanced game system. It's pretty complex, although simple to play. And we're going to go and start talking about the core mechanic. So the core mechanic, and I'm right here, the core mechanic in Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game is the D20. So that's very common. You will frequently be asked to roll a D20 and add and subtract modifiers, which is very similar to other games. And what makes this an OSR game is the fact that you're dealing with the same 6 attributes that you see in original Dungeons and Dragons and many, many other OSR products. Or old school games as well. And the theory of, or the criterion of an OSR game is that you should be able to take a character from one game system and move that character over into another game system with just some minor tweaks, and they should be fully compatible. And so I can very easily take these rules and shift it into a different genre, which another product I'm going to talk about does that, or I can take characters from another product and move them over into here, as long as they're adhering to those features of an OSR game. So going on and continuing, occasionally a character may roll a die other than a D20 when acting. A D16, a D24, even a D30 are used for weaker or stronger warriors and spellcasters. How is this game different from what I have played before? DCC does not have prestige classes, attacks of opportunity, feats, or skill points. Classes and races are one and the same. You are a wizard or an elf. So that goes back to old school D&D. DCC uses an ascending armor class system. A normal unarmored peasant is AC 10, while a warrior and plate mail is AC 18. Attack saves and skill checks will involve rolling a d20, adding modifiers, and trying to beat that number. There are 3 saving throws: fortitude, reflex, and willpower. No matter what edition you've played before, clerics turn creatures that are unholy to their religion. This may include undead and other creatures. All spells cast with a spell check where the caster rolls a d20, adds certain modifiers, and tries to score higher. The higher the roll, the more effective the result. Each spell has a unique chart that adjudicates the spell's results. And when I get into spells, because spell casting in this game is very unpredictable, and all of those charts. It's a very chart-happy game system. So if you're not crazy about rolling on random charts, DCC is not the game to get into. But I think when you see how it works and just the randomness and the potential, dangers and tremendous successes that are possible, when we get into that magic system, you'll see why this is such an interesting system to play. Cleric spellcasting works differently. I'm sorry, I skipped. Let's see. Wizards may or may not lose their spells after casting. A low result means the wizard cannot cast the spell again that day. On a high result, he can cast the spell again. Cleric spellcasting works differently from a wizard casting. Clerics never lose a spell when it's cast. However, when a cleric casts any spell and it fails in an attempt, he may increase his natural failure range. By the end of the day, a cleric may automatically fail on more rolls than just a natural one. All right, so and it's almost like with clerics, it's like when they fail to cast a spell, it's almost like they're accumulating a disfavor with their deity. And so that's how it's explained, that it becomes harder and harder for them to continue casting spells when they continuously fail, or if they fail a number of times. There is a critical hit matrix. Higher level characters and martial characters generate critical hits more often and roll on a more deadly results table. And you can burn off ability scores to enhance die rolls. All characters can burn luck, and wizards and elves can burn other abilities. So, that's just the introduction. So, characters. This is chapter 1. The character funnel. So let me talk about this. The character funnel. Some role-playing games codify game balance in an abundance of character options. The DCC RPG takes an anachronistic approach to this concept by pursuing an even playing field through randomization rather than complexity. The character creation steps that follow generate a play style unlike any you have experienced in the last 20-odd years, providing you follow the steps precisely. Omit any element and you'll find that the process does not work, and here is why. Bottom line is you're going to generate several, and I believe each player is going to generate about 4 zero-level characters. And the expectation is that many of these characters on their first adventure are not going to make it, or they're going to be unviable and so on. But the characters that do survive will then become first-level characters. So the funnel takes place in level 0 play. During this first level 0, it is expected that each player will lose some or most of his characters. When mere peasants and yeomen explore deadly dungeons, a high mortality rate is a matter of course. By the end of the first game, the players will be left with a motley crew of survivors, and this group of heroic adventurers becomes first-level party. Using this method of highly random character results, high mortality rates, and player choices as to which of their randomly generated characters takes risks and which stays safe, you will be the judge will find you have a party randomly generated characters in which the players have agency. And that's all, a major component of a lot of the discussions around role-playing games in general is player agency. And I have always found that player agency is best developed when you have them start their characters off pre-becoming an adventure class. so before they become these either seasoned adventurers or before they become people willing to become seasoned adventurers, they're just regular people. And I've always liked game systems that have done that, where it's ordinary people attempting to do extraordinary things. So the funky dice, I talked about those already. And so the dice progression here in this game, you can see here is a D3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20, 24, and 30. And also most likely D100s, although they don't mention it here. Ability scores, and so even though some of these have a different title to them, they're still the same 6 ability scores of strength, agility, stamina, personality, intelligence, and luck. And strength is strength, agility is dexterity, stamina could be constitution, personality is charisma, intelligence is intelligence, and luck is kind of the replacement for wisdom in a sense, although it's not quite the same. Wisdom could also be rolled into personality as well. So, but it's still 6 attributes that you use. So when you're creating your character, you're going to roll your attributes, as is the typical systems of rolling for attributes. And so rolling 3d6 and then applying them, whether they're assigned or just listed up and down. Like I said, you're rolling 4 0 level characters right off the get-go, and I'll do a separate video where I'm actually doing character creation to show you how that works. So after rolling the 3d6 to determine the player's luck score or any of the other attributes, then you go down to this table below for luck, and you're going to roll a d30, and it will describe the luck score. So let's just do that really quick. So a 25. So I rolled a 25. All right, and 25 here says bountiful harvest, hit points, apply at each level. All right, and so I'm going to add that attribute of bountiful harvest. They always get, that particular character always gets additional hit points because of that luck score, that table roll. They go into saving throws and languages here. So describing how saving throws work, and like I said, you want to beat the score that you're dealing with. So you're rolling a d20, add your modifiers, and compares the results to the target number, the DC. If the result is equal to or greater than the DC, the save is made. If not, dire effects may occur. There are languages, additional languages that player characters can learn at 0 level. So let's talk a little bit about the 0 level characters here. All 0 level characters start with the following: 1 to 4 hit points modified by stamina, 5d12 copper pieces, 0 experience points, 1 randomly determined piece of equipment, 1 randomly determined occupation. Based on an occupation, they may possess 1 weapon and training in its use, or possession of some trade goods. A +1 modifier to attack rolls and all saving throws. Note that 0 level characters use a crit die of 1d4 on crit table 1. As a character earns experience, his XP total advances. When the XP reaches 10, he may choose a class. So these 0 level characters are not even choosing a class until they reach level 1. Again, everyone starts off as a yeoman, a peasant, just a regular town person or commoner. Occupations, demi-humans, they go through these huge occupations list. So here's the D100 for the occupation. So let's see, I rolled that character's luck. Let's see, I actually don't have a D10 here, or my D100. Well, anyway, let's say 65. I just pulled it off the top of my head. So this character's profession was a healer. A healer has a trained weapon of club and holy water, 1 vial of holy water. So that's a trade good. So, just randomly picked. Here we have 27 or 28 is a dwarven stonemason, a hammer, and 5 stones, fine stone worth 10 pounds. Blah. 5 fine stone, 10 pounds. Okay. So anyway, weapons training, trade goods, alignment. So alignment, very simple system here. Lawful, chaotic, and neutral. All right, just like old school, original Dungeons and Dragons. They go into level advancement, choosing a class. So I'm going to flip through these. So once you reach level 1, you can then choose a class. And you're going to choose a class that best matches the attribute level, the attributes and the occupation potentially, and just the experience the character had gained through that first adventure from the characters that actually survived. We have clerics and all of the the various gods for the clerics. Once again, some really awesome artwork. Love the artwork in this book. You have a thief. I'm kind of, old school. Like, I liked when they used to call them thieves. I never liked when they shifted to rogue. I just liked my characters to be thieves, and that was their motivation, was to steal stuff. And they go through the thieves' skills. So you do have backstab, sneaking silently, hiding in shadows, pickpocketing, climbing sheer surfaces, picking locks, finding traps, forging documents. So that's a little interesting thing that they automatically disguise, reading languages, handling poisons, and casting spells from a scroll. So some additional skills, and then the most common that you're probably familiar with if you've played old school Dungeons and Dragons. You have the warrior. All right, so here we have a warrior and warrior titles, warrior their level of attack. So at level 1 they get a plus D3, and so that's where those funky dice come in. And D4, D5, D6, D7. So at level 5 they're rolling a D7 as their modifier as well. So, and then it goes from level 7 through 10 is just a D10 plus 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. There's militant orders for warriors, wizards. Wizards, of course, use a critical die table. They have their attack bonuses with their spells, the number of known spells, maximum number of spells, reflex, fortification, and will for their saving throws, and then their titles and such. It's a nice little picture here as well, showing wizards. Dwarves are both a species and a class, or a race and a class, if you want to say that. And they have various, different abilities and such. Elves, same thing. Halflings. So chapter 2, the skills. And we already talked about, I already spoken about some of the skills that characters can have, and it's very short section here. So skills by occupation, and we talked about those. Making skill checks. A skill check is made by rolling a die. If the skill is trained, the character rolls a d20 for the check. Otherwise, he rolls a d10. When the appropriate modifiers are applied to the roll, and the total is compared to the difficulty challenge for the task at hand, if the roll is greater than the DC, then the check succeeds. Otherwise, it fails. Difficulty levels. A DC 5 is child's play. A DC 10 takes a man's deed. The weak and unskilled could not likely achieve this. A DC 15 is a feat of daring do. Takes someone special and accomplished in that task. A DT 20 is hero's work. Opposed skill checks, sometimes two characters attempting opposite actions, and so there's an opposal roll where you probably see who breaks the tie, who rolls better. When not to make a skill check, skill checks are designed for use in a system of abstract rules as necessary to adjudicate a situation. Only make a skill check when practical descriptions by the player will not suffice. Okay. And now finally, Chapter 3, Equipment. Here we have a nice looking picture here of a store that a adventure party might go into to see, all right, well, let's equip ourselves for that next adventure. So here we have starting gold by class. Here we have the coinage breakdown, and here you have a list of weapons. Ammunition, armor. Here's some random tables. So random table 3-4 is for equipment. This is what you do at the beginning when you're randomly determining your starting character equipment. So here, we'll roll a d24 and see what that character would end up with. So an 8. An 8 would be flint and steel. And so free flint and steel along with that character. So mounts, and then we get to combat. So once again, you can see that this is a fairly unique system. It's a system that does have the reputation of being a very challenging system. Your characters will be in a good deal of danger, especially at low levels in this game, that probably more so than if you're comparing it to other game systems like Dungeons & Dragons 5e or Pathfinder, and other games more along that line where there's a lot of I want to say safety built in, unless you're doing very specific adventures. And we didn't even get to the magic section yet for this video. When we get to there and you start seeing the randomization that takes place, the random results that can happen from casting spells, it brings a whole uniqueness to the game. It brings an element of danger and uncertainty to the game, and it might, at least initially, make you wonder, why the hell would anybody want to be a wizard when all these negative things could happen from trying to cast spells. But in a more traditional sense, when you look at games that are based on a very traditional belief of magic and the way magic worked, magic is a dangerous thing, and that's not always reflected in some of the role-playing games that are out there. Is that it's always been a dangerous business, or at least that's how it was described in early fiction. If you go to like Robert E. Howard's, there was almost always a downside to getting heavily involved in magic in Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age. And I'm sure that it's seen in other, Lord of the Rings, wielding magic is something that was always depicted as being very taxing on individuals, and even in, if you want to go to a different genre, Star Wars and using force powers has always, it's something that taxes the individual when they're trying to, do really extraordinary things with their force abilities. And so this game here takes that to kind of another level in having random outcomes. That's so I'm looking forward to doing that video fairly soon. So once again, thanks for joining, and take a look at Dungeon Crawl Classics. And like I said, there were some other third-party games out there that are using Dungeon Crawl Classics as as a base system to use for some of their other products out there. So one that I want to mention from Bloat Games is Operation Bug Hunt from Bloat Games, and you can get that on Drive-Thru RPG for $2.99. And when I purchase that, and I get some other games that I'm expecting from Bloat Games, I will bring that up and give you a look at that as well. Continuing on with Bloat Games, so I finally got my t-shirt, The Blackest of Deaths. So thank you for that, and I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks to the developers of Dungeon Crawl Classics. Blah, I can't talk right now. For producing, such an interesting game. I'm really looking forward to playing it and to digging further into this game system. And you all have a great weekend, the remainder of the weekend there. I look forward to seeing you in the gaming system, on the gaming screen. Still struggling with all my medication and everything, so a little bit bonkers. And once again, thanks for joining. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't joined or subscribed, please consider subscribing, and share the video out there. Questions and comments in the comments section, always appreciated, and I look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.